Eventually, news arrives that the political conflict in Cracovia has ended. Viktor can finally return home or legally enter New York for one night before leaving. But Dixon, terrified Viktor's case will expose his failures, creates one final obstacle. He offers Viktor a deal. Dixon pressures Viktor to abandon his dream of entering New York and return directly to Cracovia, threatening to expose Gupta and punish the workers who helped him if he refuses. For the first time in the film, Viktor nearly gives in. The exhaustion of endless waiting hangs heavily over him. But then something extraordinary happens. The workers throughout the terminal unite behind him. Gupta distracts security officers. Friends clear pathways through checkpoints. Employees who once barely noticed Viktor now risk their own jobs to help him complete his journey. The sequence feels triumphant not because of action or spectacle, but because ordinary people choose humanity over policy. As Viktor walks through the terminal one final time, the camera lingers on familiar faces watching silently with pride and sadness. This strange airport family understands they may never see him again. Dixon attempts one last confrontation, demanding Viktor stop, but even Dixon finally realizes the battle is over. Viktor has already won in the only way that truly matters, by remaining compassionate in a system designed to erase individuality. With quiet determination, Viktor steps outside the terminal doors into the cold New York night, experiencing freedom after months of artificial light and confinement. The film opens with the restless energy of the terminal as crowds surge through the glowing corridors of John F. Kennedy International Airport. Suitcases roll across polished floors, departure boards flicker endlessly, and voices overlap in dozens of languages. In the middle of this organized chaos arrives Viktor Navorski, carrying a worn suitcase and a quiet smile that hides both exhaustion and hope. He steps carefully through customs, clutching a can of Planters peanuts and a passport from the tiny Eastern European nation of Cracovia. At first, everything seems routine, but behind the customs desk, expressions begin to change. Officers exchange nervous glances. Television screens suddenly erupt with breaking news. A military coup has shattered Viktor's homeland while he was in the air. In an instant, his passport becomes invalid. His country technically no longer exists in diplomatic terms. Frank Dixon, the rigid acting airport director, escorts Viktor into a back office under cold fluorescent lights and calmly explains the impossible reality: he cannot enter the United States, but he also cannot go home. Viktor barely understands the English words, yet the meaning slowly crushes him. Around him, phones ring, and airport life continues without pause while his entire identity dissolves in silence. The moment he steps back into the terminal carrying nowhere to go, the airport transforms from a gateway into a prison. As night falls across the airport, Viktor begins to realize the brutal reality of his situation. The terminal never truly sleeps. Cleaning crews glide across the marble floors, escalators continue their endless mechanical climb, and distant boarding announcements echo like reminders that everyone else is free to leave. Viktor wanders through food courts and waiting areas searching for somewhere to rest. With no money and no legal status, every basic need becomes a challenge. He studies strangers carefully, trying to decode English one word at a time from advertisements and television subtitles. Hunger eventually pushes him to desperate improvisation. He learns abandoned luggage carts return small coin deposits, and soon he quietly collects carts throughout the terminal, earning just enough quarters to buy crackers and ketchup packets. Meanwhile, Frank Dixon watches him through security cameras with growing irritation. Dixon wants the problem gone quickly, but Viktor stubbornly refuses to break any laws that would justify arrest or deportation. Their conflict becomes strangely personal. Dixon represents order, rules, and bureaucracy. Viktor represents patience and humanity quietly resisting those systems. In one touching moment, Viktor creates a tiny sleeping area near a construction zone, using discarded cushions and blankets to build a fragile sense of home beneath harsh airport lighting. Around him, travelers rush toward flights and reunions while he remains frozen in limbo, surviving hour by hour inside a world designed only for temporary stays. Throughout the film, Viktor never lets go of the old peanut can he carried from Cracovia, and now its meaning finally begins to emerge. Inside are signatures from famous jazz musicians collected over many years by Viktor's late father. One autograph remains missing, and Viktor traveled all the way to New York for a single reason: to complete his father's lifelong dream. Suddenly, Viktor's entire journey gains emotional weight far beyond survival. He is not simply trapped in an airport by bad luck. He is carrying the unfinished wish of someone he loves deeply. Days slowly blend together, but Viktor refuses to collapse under loneliness. Instead, he begins adapting to the strange ecosystem of the airport itself. He studies English obsessively using guidebooks and television commercials, repeating phrases under his breath while observing conversations around him like a student trapped inside a living classroom. The terminal employees slowly begin noticing him, not as a problem, but as a person. Gupta, the nervous janitor with secrets of his own, eyes Viktor suspiciously at first before warming to his quiet politeness. Enrique, a food service worker with endless romantic problems, discovers Viktor has a remarkable ability to listen despite limited English. Soon Viktor becomes part of the terminal's hidden rhythm. He helps workers carry supplies, fixes small construction problems, and navigates crowds with increasing confidence. One of the film's most beautiful transitions happens almost silently. the airport that once swallowed him whole gradually starts recognizing him as one of its own. The cinematography emphasizes this shift perfectly. Early scenes frame Viktor as isolated against enormous spaces, but now he moves naturally through crowded hallways and fluorescent corridors with purpose. Even the soundscape changes. What once felt overwhelming begins to feel familiar. Yet beneath these growing connections remains painful uncertainty. Every night Viktor still checks the arrival boards, hoping Crocosia's political crisis has ended. Every night the answer is still no. The terminal has become his world, but it was never supposed to be home. Among the constant flow of strangers passing through the terminal, one person finally stops long enough to truly notice Viktor. Amelia Warren, a flight attendant carrying the exhaustion of a complicated personal life behind practiced smiles, first encounters him during one of his awkward misunderstandings with airport staff. There is something immediately different in the way Viktor looks at her, not with charm or confidence, but with pure sincerity untouched by manipulation. Amelia, used to shallow conversations and broken promises from the married man she secretly loves, finds Viktor's innocence unexpectedly comforting. Their early interactions are filled with gentle humor and hesitation. Viktor nervously practices English phrases before speaking to her, while Amelia slowly lowers the emotional walls she keeps around herself. At the same time, Viktor continues helping Enrique pursue a customs officer he is too afraid to approach. Through fragmented translation and improvised conversations, Viktor accidentally becomes the bridge connecting lonely people inside the airport. The terminal starts feeling less like a holding cell and more like a strange little community built from missed flights and unfinished dreams. But Dixon notices Viktor becoming increasingly comfortable, and that unsettles him deeply. He offers Viktor opportunities to escape illegally, hoping he will break the rules. Each time, Viktor quietly refuses. He will not destroy his chance of legally entering America someday. This quiet moral discipline frustrates Dixon even more because it exposes the emptiness beneath his authority. Viktor may be trapped physically, but spiritually he remains free in ways the airport director no longer understands. Weeks pass, and Viktor transforms from stranded traveler into an unlikely resident of the terminal. He begins working unofficial construction jobs inside the airport, using skills from his old life to repair walls and renovate sections under construction. For the first time since arriving, he earns real money. The scenes carry a warm, almost magical atmosphere as Viktor buys proper meals, tailored clothes, and even a comfortable suit. Watching him reclaim small pieces of dignity feels deeply emotional because every victory is earned through patience rather than luck. One memorable sequence shows him dining alone at an airport restaurant, carefully savoring a simple meal while soft jazz plays in the background. It is not luxury, it is humanity returning. His friendships deepen too. Gupta jokes with him openly now, Enrique trusts him completely, and other workers greet him with familiarity instead of suspicion. The terminal becomes a miniature society hidden inside the larger machine of global travel. Yet beneath the humor and warmth, the film quietly reminds us that all these people are stuck in their own ways. Amelia remains trapped in an unhealthy relationship. Enrique fears rejection. Gupta hides from his past. Viktor, despite his optimism, still lives under fluorescent ceilings instead of open skies. One evening, Amelia and Viktor share a quiet conversation overlooking the glowing runway lights outside enormous glass windows. Planes rise into the dark sky one after another while Viktor remains grounded, caught emotionally between hope and acceptance. The revelation changes how we see every sacrifice he has made. While others chase careers, promotions, or romance, Viktor's mission is rooted in loyalty and memory. Meanwhile, his bond with Amelia grows more intimate. They wander through quiet parts of the terminal late at night sharing stories from their lives, both aware this strange connection cannot last forever. There is melancholy in every smile between them because airports are places built around departures. Dixon, however, grows increasingly desperate to remove Viktor before higher authorities notice the embarrassment. He pressures airport staff to isolate him and manipulates rules whenever possible. Yet Viktor's kindness has already spread too far. The workers around the terminal begin subtly protecting him, forming a quiet rebellion against bureaucracy through simple acts of compassion. In a place designed around schedules and regulations, human empathy slowly becomes the strongest force in the building. For a brief moment, Viktor experiences something close to real happiness. Amelia begins spending more time with him, escaping the emotional chaos of her affair and finding peace in Viktor's gentle honesty. Their scenes together feel suspended outside normal time. Viktor even prepares a makeshift romantic dinner for her inside a closed section of the terminal, decorating the space with candles and carefully arranged furniture gathered from abandoned gates. It is humble, imperfect, and deeply sincere. Amelia is visibly moved because no one has ever treated her with such genuine care. But beneath the warmth lies painful inevitability. Amelia still cannot fully let go of her complicated life outside the airport, while Viktor's future remains uncertain. The terminal itself becomes symbolic of their relationship, beautiful for a moment, yet fundamentally temporary. At the same time, Viktor successfully helps Enrique confess his feelings to Dolores, creating one of the film's most joyful side stories. The happiness of others contrasts sharply with Viktor's own fragile situation. Even while building connections and memories, he remains stateless, waiting for permission to continue living his actual life. Every moment of joy exists under the shadow of eventual departure. As Viktor becomes beloved by the terminal staff, Frank Dixon's frustration hardens into obsession. What once seemed like a bureaucratic inconvenience now threatens his authority and career ambitions. Dixon begins enforcing rules more aggressively, watching Viktor constantly through security monitors like a prisoner under surveillance. Yet the more pressure he applies, the more sympathetic Viktor appears to everyone around him. In one tense sequence, Dixon learns Gupta is hiding from a criminal charge in India and uses that knowledge to pressure Viktor into giving up his dream of entering New York legally. The atmosphere inside the terminal suddenly shifts. Friendly hallways feel colder. Conversations become cautious. Even the endless airport announcements now sound oppressive instead of routine. Viktor senses the tension but continues carrying himself with quiet dignity. One of the film's strongest emotional moments arrives when Amelia finally admits she cannot fully commit to Viktor. Her inability to escape her old relationship devastates him, though he hides the pain behind politeness. For the first time, Viktor's optimism visibly cracks. He realizes that despite all the friendships and progress he has made, the terminal still separates him from real life. Yet Viktor refuses bitterness. Instead of anger, he responds with understanding, making the heartbreak feel even heavier. His kindness remains intact even when the world gives him every reason to lose it. The final moments of the terminal are beautifully simple. Viktor travels through the streets of New York City with childlike wonder. After spending so long trapped inside controlled airport corridors, the city feels almost unreal. Yet Viktor is not there for sightseeing. He heads directly to a small jazz club where the final surviving musician connected to his father's collection performs. The scene is quiet and emotional. Viktor approaches nervously, opens the peanut can, and finally receives the missing autograph his father spent years trying to obtain. No dramatic speech follows. No grand celebration. Just a deeply human moment of closure carrying the weight of love, memory, and perseverance. Viktor steps back outside into the snowy New York streets, mission complete at last. Then he simply hails a cab and says the words he has waited the entire film to speak: "I am going home." It is a perfect ending because the journey was never truly about entering America. It was about honoring a promise, surviving isolation without losing kindness, and discovering that even in places built for temporary encounters, genuine human connection can still change lives forever.